In accordance with the resolution 65/281, I now give the floor to His Excellency Federico Villegas, President of the Human Rights Council.
Señor Presidente,
President, Excellencies, distinguished delegates, ladies and gentlemen, it is an honor to address you today and to present the annual report of the Human Rights Council to the General Assembly. Let me begin by congratulating the 14 states who were recently elected as members of the Human Rights Council for the term 2023 to 2026. I have full confidence that you, along with all Council members, will uphold the highest standards in the promotion and protection of human rights and fundamental freedoms around the world, as well as at home. President, the work of the Human Rights Council is consolidated in the annual report and its addendum before you, which cover the period from 1st of October 2021 to 7th October 2022. Pursuant to GA Resolution 65/281 on the review of the Human Rights Council. It contains the activities as well as the resolutions, decisions and President's statements adopted by the Council at its 3 regular sessions this year, as well as 32nd, 33rd and 34th special sessions held on November 2021, in December 2022 and in May 2022 respectively. Since assuming the presidency on the 1st of January, my priority has been to encourage genuine dialogue within the Council with the aim of strengthening cooperation and achieving mutual understanding despite our differences. The increasingly complex geopolitical context was the background to our work this year. However, the Council has continued to come together to address a multitude of recurrent as well as emerging human rights issues and respond to urgent situations. I must say that I am proud of what we have achieved collectively. Over the course of its 3 regular sessions, the Council adopted a total of 100 resolutions, President's statements and decisions. 67 of these were adopted without a vote. We heard reports of 14 country-specific and 45 thematic special procedure mandates and 10 investigative mechanisms. We engaged in dialogue with the mandate holders to dig further into the issues and situations addressed. Where emerging issues arose that justified substantive human rights considerations, the Council contributed to the progressive development of new norms on important issues such as climate and technology. And we have heard this first report. We've also had debates on access to vaccines following the COVID-19 pandemic from a human rights perspective. President, over the period covered in the report before you, the Council reacted and responded promptly to human rights situations that deserved its attention by holding 3 special sessions and 2 urgent debates. In its 32nd special session on the situation of human rights in the Sudan, held in November last year, the Council condemned in the strongest possible terms the military takeover that occurred on the 25th of October in the Sudan, and requested the High Commissioner for Human Rights to designate without delay an expert on human rights in Sudan to monitor the developing human rights situation until restoration of its civilian-led government. Last December, the Council held its 33rd special session on the human rights situation in Ethiopia. The Council condemned in the strongest terms all human rights violations and abuses and violations of international humanitarian law and international refugee law committed in northern Ethiopia by all parties. The International Commission of Human Rights Experts established through this is already conducting an exhaustive investigation and impartial investigation into allegations of violations and abuses committed in Ethiopia since the 3rd of November 2020 by all parties to the conflict. This is to complement the work undertaken by the Joint Investigative Team. On the 3rd of March of this year, immediately following the conclusion of the high-level segment of its 49th regular session, the Council held an urgent debate on the situation of human rights in Ukraine, stemming from Russian aggression, just 1 week after the invasion. Upon conclusion of the debate, the Council decided to establish an independent international commission of inquiry on Ukraine with the mandate to, inter alia, investigate all alleged violations and abuses of human rights, violations of international humanitarian law and related crimes in the context of the aggression against Ukraine by the Russian Federation, and to establish the facts, circumstances and root causes of any such violations and abuses. A few weeks later, I appointed the commissioners who presented their first oral update to the Council in September at its 51st session. The Council again urgently addressed the human rights situation in Ukraine, stemming from the Russian aggression in May of this year, during its 34th special session, reiterating its demand for an immediate cessation of military hostilities against Ukraine and for all parties to the conflict to respect the fundamental principles and rules of international humanitarian law. The Council requested the Independent International Commission of Inquiry to address the events that took place in late February and in March 2022 in the areas of Kiev, Chernihiv, Kharkiv and Sumy. Additionally, the Council requested the United Nations High Commissioner for Human Rights to present an oral update on the grave human rights and humanitarian situation in Mariupol at its 50th session in June. Then in July, the Council held an urgent debate on the human rights of women and girls in Afghanistan. The outcome resolution of this debate called for measures to ensure that local women's rights organizations and local organizations led by women could continue to carry out their work all over Afghanistan and support women and girls. In line with this resolution, during its 51st regular session in September, the Council held an enhanced interactive dialogue with the participation of the Special Rapporteur on the situation of human rights in Afghanistan, as well as an Afghan female human rights activist. Other country-specific mandates that the Human Rights Council established this year include the group of 3 human rights experts on Nicaragua, which is mandated to conduct thorough and independent investigations into all alleged human rights violations and abuses committed in Nicaragua since April 2018. This includes the possible gender dimensions of such violations and abuses and their structural root causes. I also appointed the experts of this mechanism who are already working intensively. The Council also decided to appoint a new special rapporteur on the situation of human rights in the Russian Federation to monitor the situation of human rights in the Russian Federation and collect, examine and assess relevant information from all relevant stakeholders, including Russian civil society, both inside and outside the country. Moreover, the Council has extended the existing country-specific mandates of investigative mechanisms and special procedures on South Sudan, the Democratic People's Republic of Korea, Myanmar, the Islamic Republic of Iran, Belarus, Eritrea, Burundi, the Bolivarian Republic of Venezuela, the Central African Republic, Somalia, and the Democratic Republic of the Congo. President, the progressive development of international human rights law is one of the principal roles of the Human Rights Council. This year, once again, we contributed to this objective. The Human Rights Council made notable progress in thematic areas in 2022. For example, in its recent September session, the Council adopted 3 new resolutions relating to emerging technologies and their impacts on human rights, namely on neurotechnology and human rights, on cyberbullying, and on the human rights implications of new and emerging technologies in the military domain. Moreover, in a new resolution on technical assistance and capacity building to address the human rights implications of the nuclear legacy in the Marshall Islands, the Council requested the Office of the High Commissioner to prepare a report on how we might address the challenges and barriers to the full realization and enjoyment of human rights of the people of the Marshall Islands stemming from the state's nuclear legacy. Other new thematic areas addressed by the Council this year include the role of states in countering the negative impact of disinformation on the enjoyment and realization of human rights, and the importance of casualty reporting for the promotion and protection of human rights. President, in June of this year, we had the opportunity to reflect on the achievements and lessons learned since the creation of the Council in a high-level commemorative event on the occasion of the 50th session, with the participation of important personalities, including the President of the General Assembly in person and the Secretary-General. The special procedures of the Human Rights Council provide one of the main sources of up-to-date, reliable information on human rights issues and situations around the world. I encourage all of you to take full advantage of their findings and recommendations, which can prove especially useful in early warnings and prevention efforts. As of the 20th of October 2022, 128 member states and 1 non-member observer state have extended a standing invitation to thematic special procedures. I call upon all states that have not yet done so to consider issuing standing invitations to all the special procedures mandate holders and to cooperate fully with them. Allow me now to turn to the Universal Periodic Review, which will begin its 4th cycle on the 7th of November and continues to have 100% participation. The UPR provides a constructive forum for a non-selective and non-confrontational peer review and is considered as one of the Council's greatest achievements. With each successive cycle, the member states of the United Nations, in accepting the recommendations, commit themselves to a roadmap of development based on human rights, with the goal of assisting states with implementation the Human Rights Council adopted a resolution on strengthening the voluntary funds of the UPR mechanism, which welcomes the 15th anniversary of the establishment of the Voluntary Fund for Participation in the UPR and the Voluntary Fund for Financial and Technical Assistance in implementation of the UPR. President, one of the Council's most important elements is the high-level participation of civil society in its work. Non-governmental organizations and human rights defenders represent the voice of the victims of human rights abuses and violations around the world. Their diverse views are an essential part of understanding human rights situations on the ground. Their roles as agents of change within their communities make them indispensable to technical cooperation and capacity building efforts. That said, I am happy to share that in 2022 we heard over 2,400 oral interventions from NGOs during the Council sessions. I am even more pleased to inform you that after 2 years of Human Rights Council sessions without side events, the Council's 51st session saw 72 in-person side events held by NGOs. Despite the many challenges related to the COVID-19 pandemic and the related restrictions, the Council has remained inclusive to civil society. Throughout my presidency, I have done my utmost to ensure a safe space for civil society representatives to contribute to our work without fear of reprisal or intimidation, to allow their voices to be heard, as well as to interact with other stakeholders. In this regard, I have regularly reminded states that acts of intimidation and reprisal against individuals or groups that participate in the work of the Council or its mechanisms are unacceptable. I have called on them to take all necessary measures to prevent and ensure adequate protection against such acts. Moreover, the press is an essential actor in the activities of the Council. By giving a voice to those that have none, the press forms part of the community of human rights defenders and equally face enormous risks to ensure that their stories about human rights abuses and violations are brought to light. On World Press Freedom Day this year, for the first time, the presidents of the General Assembly of the United Nations, of the General Conference of UNESCO, and of the Human Rights Council issued a joint declaration recalling the importance of guaranteeing that journalists and other media workers can carry out their work freely, independently, and safely, without obstacles, threats, or reprisals. In this context, I would like to highlight that the media coverage of the Council has contributed to increasing its visibility in the social networks. More and more people are following the Council because its work affects them, directly or indirectly. Social networks amplify the voice of human rights defenders and link it with the fundamental concept of human rights, which is empathy for the suffering of other human beings, even when there is no direct personal interest in doing so. President, this year the Human Rights Council adopted several resolutions with specific recommendations made to this General Assembly. Through the resolution adopted in March on the situation of human rights in Myanmar, the Human Rights Council recommended that the General Assembly submit the reports of the High Commissioner and of the Special Rapporteur to the relevant United Nations bodies, including the Security Council, for their consideration and appropriate action, taking into account the relevant conclusions and recommendations. In its resolution entitled Situation of Human Rights in the Syrian Arab Republic, also adopted in March, the Council recommended that the General Assembly submit the reports to the Security Council for appropriate action, to express its appreciation to the Commission for its briefings provided to members of the Council and the Assembly, and recommend the continuation of such briefings. Finally, in the resolution entitled "From Rhetoric to Reality, a Global Call for Concrete Action Against Racism, Racial Discrimination, Xenophobia, and Related Intolerance," the Council requested that the General Assembly limit the tenure of the eminent experts to 4 years, which may be renewed once, and that the current experts should continue to serve until the appointment of new experts is finalised, and also request that the limit of tenure also apply to the continued service of experts already appointed as of the date of adoption of the resolution. In this regard, I wish to highlight the importance of the work carried out by the Office of the High Commissioner for Human Rights, not only in respect of its support of the Council's daily activities, but also in relation to its relevant contribution to the substance of the themes addressed. President, over recent years, the Human Rights Council has been facing organisational challenges resulting from the growing gap between its ever-increasing volume of work and the resources allocated to the departments and offices that support it. The 49th session of March of this year was the longest in the Council's history, 5 full weeks. But we still needed 7 lunchtime meetings to complete the programme of work. The Council is addressing very pertinent human rights issues with a time limit of barely 1.5 minutes of speaking time, which is the bare minimum to be able to deliver a substantive statement in a debate. Against this backdrop, at its 51st session, the Council adopted Decision 51/101, entitled "Appropriate Support for the Human Rights Council," which requests the Secretary-General to provide the Human Rights Council with the support necessary to be able to meet no less than 14 weeks to fulfill its annual programme of work. President, by way of conclusion, I wish to share with you the following reflection. In 2023, we will commemorate 2 important social contracts of humanity: the Universal Declaration of Human Rights and the Vienna Declaration and Plan of Action. Since the moment we started the revolutionary idea of international human rights, the UN has consolidated the protection of human rights as one of the 3 pillars of the organization, together with the development and preservation of peace and security. Since that Universal Declaration 75 years ago and the Vienna Declaration 30 years ago, the Human Rights Council has become the principal forum in the world that annually adopts decisions to strengthen this essential pillar. For this reason, I wish to take this opportunity to thank this General Assembly for its constant support to the Human Rights Council and its work, and express my sincere hope that this support will continue in the years to come. I thank you for your attention.
I thank the President of the Human Rights Council.